The emergency beacon screamed across 17 different frequencies, each one more desperate than the last. Ambassador Zekai of the Volari Federation clutched his communicator with trembling tentacles as his ship shuddered under another barrage of plasma fire. The crimson bolts lit up the darkness of space like deadly fireworks, each one bringing the pirates closer to breaching their hull. Status report. Zekai called out to his bridge crew, though he already knew the answer would be grim. Shields down to 12%, Ambassador, replied his tactical officer, Veltar. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Life support is holding, but barely. Through the viewport, Zekai could see the sleek black ships of the Krex raiders closing in like predators circling wounded prey. Their ships were built for one purpose: violence. Sharp angles, heavy armor, and enough firepower to reduce a peaceful diplomatic vessel to scrap metal in minutes. The Volari had been returning from the outer colonies when the raiders ambushed them. What should have been a routine diplomatic mission to establish trade agreements had turned into a nightmare. The Krex didn't want to negotiate or steal cargo. They wanted slaves, and Volari were considered a delicacy in the illegal markets of the Outer Rim. Sir, incoming transmission from the lead raider ship, reported the communications officer. Put it through, Zekai said, straightening his robes despite the chaos around him. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the scarred face of Captain Vexmore, the most feared pirate in 3 sectors. His reptilian features were twisted into what passed for a smile among his species, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Ambassador Zekai, Vexmore hissed, his voice like grinding metal. How delightful to see you again. I trust you remember our last encounter? Zekai's blood ran cold. Their previous meeting had resulted in the death of his predecessor and the enslavement of 24 Volari diplomats. Only Zekai's quick thinking and a well-timed rescue by Federation forces had prevented a complete massacre. What do you want, Vexmore? Zekai demanded, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. The same thing I always want, Ambassador. Your ship, your cargo, and your crew. But, this time, there's no Federation fleet coming to save you. We've made sure of that. It was true. They were deep in neutral space, far from any Federation patrol routes. The nearest military base was 3 days away at maximum warp. Even if they could send a distress signal, help would arrive far too late. However, Vexmore continued, his smile growing wider, I'm feeling generous today. Surrender now, and I'll make sure your crew's deaths are quick. Resist, and, well, let's just say the slave markets pay extra for broken spirits. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zekai looked around at his crew. They were good people, scientists and diplomats who had dedicated their lives to peace and understanding between species. None of them deserved this fate. Sir, Veltar said quietly, we could try to make a run for the asteroid field. Maybe lose them in the rocks. Zekai shook his head. Our engines are damaged. We'd never make it. Then, what do we do? Asked the communications officer, her voice barely above a whisper. Zekai closed his eyes and thought. There had to be something, some option they hadn't considered. The Federation had protocols for situations like this, but they all required military support that simply wasn't available. Then, he remembered something from his diplomatic briefings. A small notation in the galactic database about a new species that had recently made contact with the galaxy at large. They were called humans, and they came from a world called Earth. The reports were interesting. Apparently, they had somehow defeated a Krex raiding fleet that had tried to invade their home system, though the details were classified. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. Comms, open a channel on all frequencies. Emergency beacon, maximum range. Sir, the raiders will track it, Veltar warned. Let them. We're dead anyway if we don't try something. Zekai took a deep breath. This is Ambassador Zekai of the Volari Federation to any ships in the vicinity. We are under attack by Krex raiders and in immediate need of assistance. Our coordinates are. He rattled off their position, knowing it was probably futile. The chances of anyone being close enough to help were astronomical. The message went out across space, a desperate plea lost in the vast emptiness between stars. Zekai slumped in his chair, feeling the weight of failure on his shoulders. In a few minutes, the raiders would board their ship, and everything would be over. Sir, the communications officer said suddenly, her voice filled with confusion. I'm getting a response. Federation ships? Zekai asked hopefully. No, sir. The signal is strange. I've never seen anything like it. Wait, there's a voice transmission coming through. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a calm human voice filled the air. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiant. We received your distress call, Ambassador. Hang tight, we're on our way. Zekai blinked in surprise. Human ship, this is Ambassador Zekai. I appreciate your response, but you don't understand the situation. There are 12 Krex Raider ships here. Unless you have a fleet with you, I would advise you to stay away. They'll destroy you. There was a pause, and then, something that sounded like laughter. 12 ships? Ambassador, that's not a fleet. That's target practice. We'll be there in 30 minutes. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew staring at each other in bewilderment. Zekai pulled up the database entry on humans again, reading through the sparse information available. According to the records, they were a relatively young species, having only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century. Their technology was considered adequate but not exceptional. Their military was untested against major threats. Sir, Veltar said, his voice uncertain. Should we warn them? A single ship against 12 raiders. Before Zekai could respond, alarms began blaring across the bridge. Sir, the raiders are moving to intercept something. Long-range sensors are picking up. Wait, this can't be right. What is it? Zekai demanded. Sir, I'm reading multiple hyperspace signatures. Big ones. Whatever's coming, it's not just one ship. On the main screen, space began to shimmer and twist as ships dropped out of hyperspace. But these weren't the sleek, graceful vessels of the Federation or the brutal, angular designs of the Krex. These ships looked like they had been built for war from the ground up. The lead vessel was massive, easily twice the size of the largest Krex raider. Its hull was a matte gray color that seemed to absorb light, and it bristled with weapon systems that Zekai didn't recognize. Behind it came more ships, each one unique in design but sharing the same intimidating presence. By the ancient stars, Veltar whispered. How many are there? The communications officer was frantically working at her console. I count 47 ships, sir. Ranging from frigate to dreadnought class. Sir, these aren't just any human ships. According to the transponder signals, this is the third fleet of the United Earth Navy. Zekai felt his legs give out as he sank into his chair. He had asked for help, expecting maybe a single patrol ship or a merchant vessel with a few defensive weapons. Instead, he had somehow summoned an entire battle fleet. Captain Chen's voice came through the speakers again, calm and professional. Ambassador Zekai, this is Admiral Chen. I've been promoted since we last spoke 30 minutes ago. Please move your vessel to a safe distance. We'll handle the raiders. Admiral, Zekai stammered, I only asked for assistance. I didn't mean for you to bring an entire fleet. Oh, this isn't the entire fleet, Ambassador. This is just the ships that were in the immediate area. When someone asks for help, we tend to take that seriously. On the tactical display, Zekai watched as the human ships arranged themselves in a perfect formation. It was like watching a dance, each vessel moving with precision and purpose. The Krex Raiders, meanwhile, had broken their attack formation and were trying to regroup in the face of this unexpected threat. Captain Vexmore's image appeared on the screen again, but his confident smirk had been replaced by something that looked suspiciously like panic. Unknown ships, this is a legitimate salvage operation. You have no authority here. Admiral Chen's response was immediate and cold. Captain Vexmore, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. You are hereby ordered to stand down and prepare to be boarded. Your ships will be impounded, and you and your crew will be taken into custody for trial. Vexmore's laugh was harsh and bitter. You think you can intimidate me with a show of force? I've been raiding these sectors for 20 years. No one tells me what to do. Very well, Admiral Chen said simply. All ships, you are cleared to engage. Remember, we want prisoners for questioning. What happened next would be talked about in bars and academies across the galaxy for decades to come. The human ships didn't charge in with guns blazing like most species would. Instead, they moved with calculated precision, each ship targeting specific systems on the raider vessels. The first volley was surgical in its accuracy. Streams of bright blue energy lanced out from the human ships, striking the raiders' engines and weapon systems with pinpoint precision. In the span of 30 seconds, the entire Krex fleet was dead in space, their ships intact but completely helpless. "This is impossible," Veltar breathed. "How did they disable 12 ships so quickly?" Zekai was wondering the same thing. The Krex were known for their sturdy ships and powerful shields. It should have taken hours of concentrated fire to disable even one of them, let alone an entire fleet. Admiral Chen's voice came through the speakers again. "Ambassador Zekai, the immediate threat has been neutralized. We're deploying boarding parties to secure the raider ships. Medical teams are standing by if you need assistance." "Admiral," Zekai managed to say, what kind of weapons are those?" "Standard plasma cannons, Ambassador. Nothing fancy. We just believe in accurate targeting." "Standard weapons?" Zekai pulled up the tactical readings from the engagement. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the galactic database. These weren't standard weapons by any definition he understood. On the view screen, he could see small craft launching from the human ships, heading toward the disabled raiders. The boarding parties moved with military precision, docking with the pirate vessels and securing them one by one. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen. She's requesting permission to come aboard." Zekai straightened his robes and tried to compose himself. "Grant permission. And prepare the formal reception chamber. I think we need to have a serious conversation." 10 minutes later, Admiral Sarachin stepped aboard the Volari diplomatic vessel, accompanied by a small security detail. She was smaller than Zekai had expected, with short dark hair and keen brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her uniform was crisp and professional, with rank insignia that spoke of hard-earned authority. "Ambassador," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I'm Admiral Chen. I'm sorry we couldn't respond sooner, but we were conducting exercises in the next system when we received your distress call." Zekai took her hand uncertainly, still trying to process what had just happened. "Admiral, I must ask. When I sent that distress call, I was hoping for maybe a single ship. How did an entire fleet respond so quickly?" Admiral Chen smiled, and Zekai was surprised by how warm it seemed. "Ambassador, when someone asks Earth for help, they get it. It's just who we are. But surely you must have protocols, procedures for evaluating threats before committing resources?" "Oh, we do," the Admiral nodded. The evaluation was quite thorough. Unknown hostile force attacking a diplomatic vessel in neutral space. Clear case of piracy and potential slavery. The response was proportional to the threat. "Proportional?" Zekai's voice cracked slightly. "You brought 47 warships to deal with 12 raiders." Admiral Chan looked genuinely confused. 12? "Ambassador, our long-range sensors detected the raiders, but we also picked up at least 6 other ships lurking at the edge of the system. This wasn't just a random pirate attack. This was a coordinated ambush, probably with reinforcements standing by." Zekai felt the blood drain from his face. "Other ships?" "Oh yes. They jumped to hyperspace the moment our fleet arrived. Probably went back to report to whoever's running this operation. Don't worry, we'll track them down eventually." The implications hit Zekai like a physical blow. This hadn't been a chance encounter with raiders. Someone had specifically targeted his diplomatic mission, and they had resources far beyond what he had imagined. "Admiral," he said slowly, "I think we need to talk. There's more going on here than either of us realized." The conference room aboard the UES Defiant was unlike anything Ambassador Zekai had ever seen. The walls displayed real-time tactical information from across 3 star systems, while holographic projectors showed detailed schematics of the captured raider ships. Most unsettling of all were the interrogation recordings playing on one screen, showing Captain Vexmore being questioned by human intelligence officers. Admiral Chen gestured for Zekai to take a seat at the polished metal table. Around them, human officers moved with quiet efficiency, analyzing data and coordinating with other ships in the fleet. The atmosphere was professional but intense, like being inside the brain of some vast military organism. "Coffee, Ambassador?" Admiral Chen asked, pouring herself a cup of the dark liquid that humans seem to consume in large quantities. "Thank you, no," Zekai replied, his stomach still churning from the revelations of the past hour. "Admiral, what you've shown me, this conspiracy goes far deeper than anyone imagined." Chen nodded grimly, taking a sip of her coffee. "According to our interrogations, the attack on your ship was just the beginning. The Kreks have formed an alliance with at least 3 other raider groups and 2 supposedly legitimate governments. Their goal is to destabilize the entire neutral zone." On the main display, a star map appeared showing the affected region. Red markers indicated known pirate bases, while yellow ones marked suspicious activity. The pattern was clear and terrifying, a coordinated campaign to control the major trade routes between the Galactic Core and the outer colonies. But why target the Volari Federation specifically? Zekai asked. "We're a peaceful species. Our military is barely capable of defending our home system." "That's exactly why you're the perfect target," replied Commander Torres, Chen's intelligence officer. She was a sharp-faced woman with cybernetic enhancements that allowed her to interface directly with the ship's computer systems. "The Volari control some of the most important diplomatic channels in this sector. If they can force your government to make concessions, they'll have a legitimate foothold in the region." Zekai's tentacles curled in distress. "My government will never negotiate with pirates. They will if the alternative is watching their diplomats die on live broadcasts across the galaxy," Chen said quietly. "The raiders weren't planning to kill you quickly, Ambassador. They were going to make an example of you." The holographic display shifted to show intercepted communications between the various raider groups. The humans had apparently cracked their encryption within hours of capturing the first ships, revealing the full scope of the conspiracy. What Zekai saw made his blood run cold. The plan was elegant in its brutality. The raiders would capture high-profile targets like diplomatic vessels, then broadcast their executions across pirate networks and black market channels. The psychological impact would be enormous, creating fear and uncertainty that would make legitimate governments more willing to pay protection money or make territorial concessions. "This is monstrous," Zekai whispered. "How many ships do they have? How many innocent people have already died?" Commander Torres manipulated the display, bringing up estimated fleet strengths. "Best guess? Somewhere between 300 and 400 combat vessels, plus support ships. They've been building this alliance for at least 2 years, carefully avoiding detection by staying in neutral space and targeting isolated ships." Admiral Chan leaned forward, her expression serious. "Ambassador, I need you to understand something. This threat goes far beyond just your people or even this sector. If the raiders succeed in controlling the neutral zone, they'll choke off trade between dozens of worlds. Millions of people will suffer. What can we do?" Zekai asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "That depends," Chen replied. "How quickly can you contact your government? And, more importantly, how much do they trust the humans?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zekai knew that his people's opinion of humanity was complicated. They respected human achievements but found their military culture somewhat alarming. The idea of asking Earth for help on this scale would be controversial at best. "Admiral," he said carefully, "my people appreciate what you've done here today. But, you must understand, inviting a human fleet into Volari space would be seen as provocative by many of our neighbors." Chen's expression didn't change, but Zekai caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "Ambassador, with respect, your neighbors' opinions won't matter much if the pirates control the shipping lanes. This is bigger than politics." Before Zekai could respond, an urgent chime sounded throughout the conference room. Commander Torres immediately began interfacing with the ship's systems, her cybernetic implants glowing as data flowed directly into her brain. "Admiral," she said, her voice tense, "we're receiving emergency transmissions from multiple sources. The raiders are moving faster than we anticipated." The main display shifted to show real-time reports flooding in from across the sector. Zekai watched in growing horror as the situation unfolded. 3 more diplomatic ships had been attacked in the past 6 hours. A Zalani trade convoy had been completely destroyed, with no survivors. Most disturbing of all, the raiders had started broadcasting footage of their attacks, just as the intelligence had suggested. "By the ancient stars," Zekai breathed. "They're not waiting." The attack on my ship was the signal to begin the full operation. Admiral Chen was already on her feet, barking orders to her staff. Alert all fleet commanders. I want battle groups moving to cover the major trade routes within the hour. And, get me a direct line to Earth Command. This just became a fleet action. Admiral, Commander Torres said, there's more. We're detecting massive hyperspace signatures throughout the region. It looks like the raiders are bringing in reinforcements from outside the sector. The tactical display updated to show new red markers appearing like a spreading infection. Ships were emerging from hyperspace at strategic points throughout the neutral zone, cutting off escape routes and surrounding key systems. Zekai felt the familiar weight of despair settling on his shoulders. This was exactly the kind of coordinated military action that the Volari Federation was helpless to counter. His people were diplomats and scientists, not warriors. How many ships are we talking about? Chen asked. Conservative estimate? 200 vessels have already emerged from hyperspace, with more arriving every hour. Admiral, they're moving to encircle the entire neutral zone. If they complete the maneuver, nothing gets in or out without their permission. Chen was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical display with the intensity of a predator analyzing prey. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried an undertone that made Zekai's skin crawl. Torres, send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we need the 2nd and 5th fleets moved to staging positions immediately. Also, contact Admiral Morrison at Titan Base. I want the 7th Fleet's experimental ships deployed within 48 hours. Admiral, Zekai interrupted, surely you're not planning to fight them all? The odds are impossible. Chen turned to look at him, and Zekai was surprised to see something that looked almost like excitement in her eyes. Ambassador, you're thinking like a diplomat. You see 200 enemy ships and think about negotiations and compromises. I see 200 enemy ships and think about how to destroy them most efficiently. The casual way she said it sent chills down Zekai's spine. This wasn't bravado or human arrogance. This was the voice of someone who had done the calculations and reached a conclusion. But, how, he asked. Even with your technology, the numbers. Numbers matter, Chen agreed. But, they're not everything. These raiders are used to fighting merchant vessels and lightly armed patrol ships. They've never faced a coordinated fleet action against an opponent who shoots back effectively. Commander Torres looked up from her workstation. Admiral, we're getting responses from the other fleet commanders. The consensus is that we should establish a defensive perimeter and wait for reinforcements. Negative, Chen said immediately. The longer we wait, the more time they have to consolidate their positions. We hit them now, while they're still deploying. Ma'am, Torres said carefully, the 3rd Fleet only has 47 ships. Even with our technological advantages, attacking a force 5 times our size is exactly what they won't expect, Chen finished. They're counting on us being cautious, playing defense while they pick off isolated targets. Instead, we're going to punch through their formation and destroy their command ships. Zekai stared at the Admiral in disbelief. That's suicide. No military doctrine in the galaxy recommends such tactics. Good thing we're not following galactic doctrine then, Chen replied with a slight smile. Ambassador, I'm going to ask you to do something that might save your people and everyone else in this sector. I need you to send a message to every government in the region. Tell them what's happening here, and tell them that humanity is willing to help. And, if they refuse? Zekai asked. Chen's expression grew cold. Then, they'll find out what it's like to deal with these pirates on their own. But, I don't think it will come to that. When people are drowning, they don't usually ask about the swimming instructor's credentials. The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Zekai found himself in the strange position of coordinating diplomatic communications from the bridge of a human warship while preparing for what many would consider a hopeless battle. The responses to his messages were varied but predictable. Some governments immediately requested human assistance, while others demanded more information before committing to anything. The most surprising response came from the Corvan Empire, humanity's long-standing rival in the galactic community. Their message was brief but significant: tell the humans we will remember this. As the 3rd Fleet moved into attack formation, Admiral Chen took a moment to explain her strategy to Zekai. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of trying to engage the entire raider force, the human ships would punch through their lines at maximum speed, targeting the largest vessels that were likely serving as command ships. Once we cut off their coordination, Chen explained, the the individual raider groups will revert to their normal behavior, looking out for themselves. They might outnumber us, but they won't be able to work together effectively.
And if you're wrong? Zekai asked.
Then, we'll find out just how good human shipbuilding really is, Chen replied grimly. As the fleet prepared to engage, Zekai received one final message that changed everything. It was from the Volari High Council, and it contained authorization for emergency military cooperation with Earth. More importantly, it included access codes for the Federation's deep space sensor network. Admiral, Zekai said, handing over the communication device, my government has decided to trust yours. These codes will give you real-time intelligence from across 3 sectors. Chen took the device and immediately handed it to Commander Torres, who began integrating the Volari sensor network with the fleet's tactical systems. Within minutes, the main display showed a complete picture of raider movements across the entire region.
Outstanding, Chen breathed, studying the new data. Torres, update our targeting priorities.
I want to hit these 3 command ships first, then sweep through this formation here. As the human ships moved into their final attack positions, Zekai found himself thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. A few hours ago, he had been a simple ambassador on a routine diplomatic mission. Now he was witnessing what might be the most important military action in recent galactic history. Admiral, he said quietly, whatever happens today, I want you to know that my people will not forget what you've done for us.
Chen glanced at him with a small smile. Ambassador, we haven't done anything yet. But we will.
The main display showed the 2 fleets converging like opposing storms. In a few minutes, the battle would begin, and the galaxy would learn just what happened when someone asked humanity for help. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a miniature star being born.
Zekai gripped the arms of his chair in the observation deck as the UES Defiant shuddered under the impact of enemy plasma bolts.
Around him, human crew members worked with calm efficiency, their voices steady despite the chaos erupting outside.
Direct hit on the port shields, reported the tactical officer.
Shield strength down to 87%. Maintain course and speed, Admiral Chan ordered from the command deck below.
All ships, execute Delta formation.
Target the command vessels as planned. Through the massive viewport, Zekai watched the battle unfold with a mixture of terror and fascination. The human ships moved like a pack of predators, weaving between incoming fire with impossible precision. Their formation never wavered, even as raider ships converged on them from 3 directions. The raiders had clearly expected a more conventional engagement. Their ships were arranged in the standard pirate formation, a loose cluster designed to overwhelm single targets through sheer weight of fire. What they hadn't anticipated was facing opponents who refused to be pinned down. Admiral, Commander Torres called out, the raider flagship is trying to move out of range.
Should we pursue? Negative. Stick to the plan.
Lieutenant Hayes, I want a full spread of torpedoes on that Krex dreadnought.
Make it count. Zekai watched in amazement as the human weapons found their targets with surgical precision.
The raiders' return fire was intense but poorly coordinated, with many shots missing entirely or striking their own allies in the chaos. A massive explosion bloomed to starboard as one of the raider command ships lost its main reactor. The blast was so intense that it temporarily overloaded the Defiant's visual sensors, leaving white afterimages burned across the viewport.
Command ship Vexor's Fury is confirmed destroyed, Torres reported. That's 2 down, 1 to go. Excellent.
Now let's see how well they fight without proper coordination.
Admiral Chen's prediction proved accurate within minutes.
As the remaining raider groups lost contact with their command vessels, their formation began to collapse. Individual captains started making decisions based on self-preservation rather than tactical doctrine, creating gaps that the human ships exploited ruthlessly. But the raiders weren't going down without a fight. A squadron of heavy cruisers managed to surround one of the human frigates, the UES Yorktown. Zekai watched in horror as concentrated fire from 6 ships hammered the smaller vessel's shields.
Yorktown is in trouble, Torres announced.
Their shields are failing. Vector 030, full power, Chen ordered.
All ships, converge on the Yorktown's position. We don't leave anyone behind. The entire human formation wheeled around with mechanical precision, abandoning their pursuit of fleeing raiders to rescue their isolated comrade.
It was a tactically questionable decision that prioritized saving lives over pressing their advantage. Zekai was about to comment on this when he saw what the raiders hadn't anticipated. As the human ships closed ranks around the Yorktown, their combined firepower created a devastating crossfire that shredded the attacking cruisers in seconds.
"By the ancient stars," Zekhai whispered.
They turned a rescue into a trap. One of the bridge officers, a young lieutenant with keen eyes, overheard him.
"That's Admiral Chen for you, sir. She doesn't just think 3 moves ahead.
She thinks 3 battles ahead."
The tide of the engagement was clearly turning.
Raider ships were either fleeing the system or surrendering in increasing numbers. But, just as victory seemed assured, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. "Admiral," Torres called out, her voice tight with concern, "we have new arrivals.
Multiple hyperspace signatures, bearing 270. It's the Raider reinforcements."
The main display shifted to show the new arrivals. Zekhai felt his heart sink as he counted the ships emerging from hyperspace.
There were easily 100 vessels, including several massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the human fleet.
"Well," Admiral Chen said with remarkable calm, "this is about to get interesting."
The reinforcements weren't a disorganized collection of pirates like the first wave.
These ships moved with military precision, forming up into proper battle lines as they advanced. At their head flew a vessel that Zekhai recognized with growing dread. "Admiral," he said urgently, "that lead ship."
"It's the Corvin Dominion flagship, the Death's Edge."
"But, that's impossible. The Corvin military isn't supposed to be involved in this."
Chen studied the tactical readout with interest rather than concern. "Commander Torres, can you confirm that identification?"
"Affirmative, Admiral. It's definitely a Corvin heavy battleship. But, it's not flying Corvin colors. The transponder signal identifies it as the Crimson Talon, flagship of the Syndicate."
"The Syndicate?" Zekhai asked. "Criminal organization," Chen explained. "Apparently, they've been buying decommissioned Corvin military hardware.
That explains why the raiders have been so well coordinated.
They're not just pirates anymore.
They're a paramilitary force." The situation was rapidly becoming hopeless. The Third Fleet had taken damage in the first engagement, and now they faced an enemy force nearly 3 times their size with proper military-grade equipment.
"Admiral," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy flagship."
"Put it through," Chen ordered. The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing a figure that made Zekhai's blood run cold. It was Warlord Thane, the most notorious criminal leader in 3 sectors. His cybernetic enhancements gleamed against his scarred flesh, and his organic eye burned with predatory intelligence.
"Admiral Chen," Thane said, his voice a harsh rasp. "I've heard interesting things about human military capabilities.
I'm here to test those rumors personally."
"Warlord Thane," Chen replied coolly. "I have to say, your timing is excellent. We were just finishing up with your advance force. I assume you're here to surrender?" Thane's laughter was like grinding metal. "Surrender?"
"Admiral, you're outnumbered 3 to 1, and my ships have twice the firepower of anything in your fleet. The smart play would be for you to surrender."
"That's an interesting perspective," Chen said thoughtfully.
"But, I have a counter-proposal. You and your ships leave this system immediately, and I'll let you keep whatever vessels can still move under their own power." "You're bluffing," Thane snarled.
"No commander is that arrogant."
"Commander Torres," Chen said without taking her eyes off the display, "please show the Warlord our updated tactical situation." The holographic display split, showing both Thane's bridge and a star chart of the local system. Zekhai stared at the chart in confusion until he noticed the small green markers scattered throughout the asteroid field behind the raider fleet.
"What are those?" he asked. Torres smiled grimly. "Stealth mines, Ambassador. We deployed them during our initial approach."
"The Warlord ships jumped right into our minefield." Thane's expression shifted from confidence to concern as his own tactical officers confirmed what the humans were showing him.
His reinforcement fleet was surrounded by enough explosives to cripple dozens of ships. "Impressive," he admitted.
"But mines are a defensive weapon.
You still can't win a straight fight." "Who said anything about a straight fight?" Chen asked. "Lieutenant Hayes, execute Omega Protocol."
Zekhai had no idea what Omega Protocol meant, but the effect was immediate and devastating. The space around the raider fleet suddenly filled with new energy signatures as cloaked human ships powered up their weapons systems.
"Cloaking technology," Zekhai breathed.
But, the Galactic Accords apply to military actions between recognized governments, Chen finished.
Since the Syndicate isn't a legitimate government, we're under no obligation to follow conventional rules of engagement. The trap was now complete.
The raider fleet found itself surrounded by mines, cloaked ships, and the visible human force. What had seemed like a hopeless situation for the humans had become a perfectly executed ambush. Warlord Thane stared at his tactical displays in disbelief.
This is impossible.
Our sensors would have detected cloaked ships. Your sensors are designed to detect conventional cloaking systems, Chen replied.
Human stealth technology works on different principles. We learned a lot from studying captured Corvan equipment over the years. The implications of that statement weren't lost on anyone.
Humanity had not only reverse-engineered alien technology but had apparently improved upon it significantly. You have 30 seconds to make your decision, Warlord, Chen continued.
Surrender and face trial, or fight and be destroyed. Either way, your criminal organization ends today. Thane's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Chen's image. For a moment, Zekai thought the criminal might actually surrender.
Then, the warlord's expression hardened into a snarl of rage. If I'm going to die, I'm taking as many of you with me as possible.
All ships, attack pattern Gamma. Target their flagship first. The transmission ended, and space erupted into chaos as nearly 200 ships opened fire simultaneously. The coordinated barrage was like nothing Zekai had ever witnessed, turning the space between the fleets into a hellscape of energy beams and exploding missiles. But the humans were ready.
Their ships moved like ghosts through the incoming fire, their formations flowing and shifting in patterns that seemed impossible to predict. The cloaked vessels struck from unexpected angles, their sudden appearances causing confusion and panic among the raider formations.
All mines, detonate on my mark, Chun ordered. Mark.
The asteroid field lit up like a chain of supernovas as hundreds of stealth mines exploded simultaneously. The perfectly timed detonations caught the raider fleet in a crossfire of shrapnel and energy, crippling dozens of ships in the opening seconds of the battle.
Direct hit on enemy formation 7, Torres reported. Multiple ships disabled or destroyed. Excellent. Continue the attack.
I want those command ships neutralized before they can coordinate a proper response.
Zekai watched in fascination as the human tactics unfolded.
They weren't trying to destroy the entire enemy fleet through brute force. Instead, they were systematically dismantling the raiders' ability to fight as a cohesive unit, turning their numerical advantage into a liability.
The Death's Edge proved to be a formidable opponent. Its massive guns hammered at the human formation, scoring hits on several ships.
But even the flagship couldn't target multiple opponents simultaneously, and the humans were using that limitation against it. Yorktown and Manchester execute pincer maneuver on the enemy flagship, Chun ordered.
Defiant will provide covering fire.
The two human ships accelerated toward the Death's Edge from opposite angles, forcing Thane to choose which threat to prioritize. It was a classic tactical dilemma with no good solutions.
Thane chose to target the Yorktown, perhaps remembering how vulnerable it had appeared earlier.
His ship's main gun swiveled toward the smaller human vessel, charging up for a devastating alpha strike.
It was exactly what Chen had been waiting for. Now, she commanded.
The Manchester and Defiant opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower focused on the Death's Edge's weapon arrays. The surgical strikes didn't destroy the massive ship, but they crippled its ability to fight back effectively.
Enemy flagship is disabled, Torres announced. Main guns offline, secondary systems failing. Signal all raider vessels, Chen ordered. This is their last chance to surrender.
The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ship after ship powered down their weapons and activated surrender beacons. The sight of their mighty flagship reduced to a drifting hulk had broken the raiders' will to fight. Within an hour, the battle was over. The humans had achieved something that military theorists would study for decades: the complete destruction of a numerically superior force with minimal losses to their own fleet. As Zekai watched the human crews begin the massive task of processing hundreds of prisoners and securing dozens of captured ships, he realized that the galaxy had just witnessed something unprecedented. Humanity hadn't just won a battle, they had redefined what was possible in modern warfare.
Admiral Chen found him in the observation lounge, staring out at the captured fleet. Quite a show, wasn't it, Ambassador?
Admiral, Zekai said slowly, I think my people need to have a very serious conversation about our relationship with Earth.
Chen smiled. I think that would be wise.
But, first, we need to deal with the immediate situation. This criminal network had connections throughout the neutral zone. Cleaning it up is going to require a coordinated effort.
You mean more human fleets? I mean cooperative enforcement action between Earth and our allies.
If the galaxy wants our help cleaning up this mess, they're going to have to work with us, not just ask us to solve their problems.
Zekai nodded thoughtfully. The implications were staggering.
Humanity had just demonstrated that they were capable of projecting military power on a scale that rivaled the greatest galactic empires.
The question now was what they intended to do with that capability.
Admiral, he said finally, when my government asked for your help, I don't think they realized what they were starting.
Chen's expression grew serious.
Ambassador, when you sent that distress call, you didn't just ask for help. You invited Earth to become involved in galactic affairs on a scale we've never attempted before.
The question now is whether the galaxy is ready for what that means.
As if to emphasize her point, the communications system chimed with an incoming priority message. Torres appeared on the display, her expression grave.
Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from 17 different governments. They're all asking the same thing: can Earth provide similar assistance in their sectors? Chen looked at Zekai with a raised eyebrow.
Well, Ambassador, it looks like word is spreading quickly. I hope your people are ready for some very interesting diplomatic negotiations. Zekai stared out at the stars, knowing that everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same again, and it had all started with a simple distress call that had reached the wrong species at exactly the right time. 3 days after the battle, the UES Defiant found itself at the center of the largest diplomatic gathering in neutral space history. Representatives from dozens of governments had traveled to witness the aftermath of humanity's intervention, and the scene was unlike anything Zekai had ever experienced. The main conference hall had been hastily converted from a cargo bay, but, even with its improvised nature, the gathering felt momentous. Delegates from the Corvan Empire sat across from Zolani trade representatives, while Thraxian military advisors shared data with Volari scientists. The one thing they all had in common was a mixture of awe and concern as they processed what they had witnessed.
Admiral Chen stood at the head of the table, flanked by holographic displays showing the current status of the cleanup operation.
The numbers were staggering: 847 captured vessels, over 15,000 prisoners, and enough evidence to implicate criminal organizations across a dozen sectors. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translators, we're here because a simple distress call has revealed a threat that goes far beyond anything we initially imagined. Ambassador Krell of the Corvan Empire, an imposing figure with metallic skin and glowing blue eyes, leaned forward.
Admiral Chen, my government is impressed by human military capabilities.
But
we're also concerned about the implications of such power being wielded unilaterally.
A fair concern, Chen acknowledged.
Which is why Earth is proposing something unprecedented in galactic history, a joint task force to address this criminal network permanently.
The suggestion caused an immediate stir among the delegates.
Joint military operations were rare enough between allied species.
A cooperative effort involving traditional rivals like the Corvans and Volari was almost unthinkable. You're suggesting that we pool our military resources under human command, asked Representative Velana of the Thraxian hegemony, her forearms gesticulating with agitation.
Not under human command, Chen corrected.
Under cooperative command. Each participating government would maintain sovereignty over their own forces while working toward common objectives.
Zekai watched the discussions with fascination.
As a diplomat, he could see the careful maneuvering behind each statement. The various species were trying to balance their desire for security against their fear of human dominance. Commander Torres approached the admiral with a datapad.
Ma'am, we've finished analyzing the captured intelligence. You need to see this. The main display shifted to show a comprehensive map of the criminal network's operations.
The scope was breathtaking. The organization had infiltrated legitimate governments, corrupted trade guilds, and established bases and systems that were supposed to be under various species' control.
This is worse than we thought, muttered Captain Trez of the Eldorian Defense Force, his reptilian features showing obvious concern. They've been planning this for decades.
Longer than that, Chen replied grimly. According to the intelligence we've gathered, this network has been active for over 50 years. They've been patient, building their influence slowly while everyone assumed they were just another pirate problem. A new voice spoke up from the back of the room.
Admiral, if I may. It was Professor Caxlan, the galaxy's leading expert on criminal organizations.
He was an elderly Zalani whose research had been instrumental in understanding how illegal networks operated.
Of course, Professor.
The data you've presented confirms my worst fears about organized crime evolution, Caxlan said, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy.
This isn't just a military threat.
It's a corruption of the entire economic and political system in this region of space. He gestured to the display, highlighting specific connections.
Look at these trade route disruptions. They're not random.
The network has been carefully manipulating supply chains to create artificial scarcities, driving up prices and increasing their profits while legitimate governments struggle with economic instability.
The implications hit the room like a physical blow. This wasn't just about piracy or even territorial control.
The criminal network had been systematically undermining the economic foundation of galactic civilization. How do we fight something like that? Asked Ambassador Krell, his usual composure cracking slightly.
The same way you fight any cancer, Chen replied. You cut it out completely, and you make sure it can't grow back.
Easy to say, commented Representative Valana. But the resources required, the coordination necessary, it would take years of sustained effort by multiple governments.
Yes, it would, Chen agreed.
Which is why Earth is prepared to make a significant commitment to this effort. The Admiral gestured to Torres, who activated a new set of displays. What appeared made several delegates gasp audibly. The United Earth government has authorized the deployment of the 2nd, 4th, and 7th fleets to this region, Chen announced. Additionally, we're prepared to share advanced sensor technology and intelligence-gathering capabilities with all participating governments.
The offer was unprecedented.
Earth was essentially proposing to station a significant portion of their military in neutral space for an extended period, while also sharing some of their most advanced technology.
What do you want in return? Asked Captain Trez suspiciously.
Chen's smile was slight but meaningful.
Cooperation. Real cooperation, not just lip service.
This network survived for 50 years because everyone assumed it was someone else's problem. If we're going to eliminate it permanently, that attitude has to change. Zekai stood up, knowing that as the ambassador who had originally called for help, his words would carry special weight.
If I may address the assembly?
The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. 3 days ago, my ship was attacked by what I thought were simple pirates. I sent a distress call hoping for minimal assistance.
Instead, I accidentally started something that may change the entire galactic political landscape.
He paused, looking around at the various delegates. I've spent the last 3 days watching human military operations, and I've learned something important. They don't just fight wars. They solve problems. The question we need to ask ourselves is whether we want to solve this problem, or just manage it for another 50 years. The speech had its intended effect. Several delegates began speaking among themselves in low voices, and Zekai could sense the mood in the room shifting toward acceptance.
Ambassador Krell was the first to speak officially.
The Corvan Empire will contribute 2 battle groups to this effort, along with our deep space monitoring stations.
Representative Valana nodded.
The Thraxian hegemony can provide logistical support and our specialized boarding teams. One by one, the various governments committed resources to the joint effort. Within 2 hours, the framework for the largest cooperative military operation in galactic history had been established.
But, even as the agreements were being formalized, new challenges were emerging.
Commander Torres received a priority transmission that made her expression darken considerably.
Admiral, she said quietly, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in the outer territories.
It looks like news of our success has reached other criminal organizations. The main display shifted to show sensor readings from the edge of known space.
Hundreds of ships were moving toward the neutral zone, representing every major criminal organization in the galaxy. They're not just coming to fight, Chen realized. They're coming to claim territory before we can consolidate our gains. Professor Caxlan studied the new data with obvious concern.
This was always a possibility. Success against one criminal network would inevitably provoke responses from others. The question is whether our new alliance is strong enough to handle multiple threats simultaneously.
Admiral Chen looked around the room at the assembled delegates.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we're about to find out just how committed everyone is to this cooperation. Because in about 48 hours, this region is going to become the most contested space in the galaxy. The gravity of the situation settled over the conference like a heavy blanket. What had started as a rescue mission had evolved into a sector-wide military operation, and now it was becoming something even larger, a test of whether different species could work together effectively in the face of existential threats. Zekai thought back to his simple distress call 3 days ago. He had asked for help, never imagining that he was actually asking humanity to reshape galactic politics. As he watched the various delegates prepare for what promised to be the most challenging military campaign in recent history, he wondered if the galaxy was ready for what they had unleashed. Outside the conference room's viewports, human ships moved in perfect formation alongside vessels from a dozen different species. It was a sight that would have been unthinkable just a week ago, but now it represented the galaxy's best hope for a stable future. The question was whether that hope would be enough when the real test began. 6 months after Ambassador Zekai's desperate distress call, he found himself standing in the newly constructed Joint Operations Center orbiting the neutral zone's capital world of Harmony Station. The facility was a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining architectural elements and technologies from dozens of different species into something that was both functional and symbolically powerful. Through the massive observation windows, Zekai could see the results of their unprecedented cooperation. Where once there had been empty space punctuated by the occasional merchant vessel, now there was a bustling hub of interstellar commerce protected by the largest peacekeeping fleet in galactic history. Quite a view, isn't it? Admiral Chen said, approaching with 2 cups of that bitter human beverage she seemed to live on. Indeed, Zekai replied, accepting the coffee with practiced ease. He had developed a tolerance for the stuff over the months of working closely with human personnel. I sometimes have trouble believing this all started with my ship being attacked by pirates. Not just pirates, Chen corrected. The most sophisticated criminal network the galaxy has ever seen. And if we hadn't acted when we did. She gestured toward the display showing the final battle statistics. The numbers told an incredible story. The Joint Task Force had grown to include forces from 37 different governments, representing the largest military cooperation in recorded galactic history. Over the past 6 months, they had dismantled criminal operations across 12 sectors, captured or destroyed more than 2,000 vessels, and arrested nearly 50,000 criminals. The Corvin intelligence reports are particularly interesting, Chen continued, pulling up a holographic display. They've traced the network's financial operations back nearly a century. These weren't just criminals, Ambassador. They were a shadow government that had been slowly taking control of entire star systems. Zekai studied the data with continued amazement. The scope of the criminal enterprise had been staggering. They had infiltrated legitimate governments, controlled major shipping companies, and even influenced scientific research to maintain their technological advantages. And, yet, they made one critical mistake, he observed. They attacked a diplomatic vessel in neutral space where a human fleet could respond quickly, Chen agreed. Though I suspect they thought we would follow standard galactic protocol and send a single ship to investigate. Instead, you sent an armada. We sent what the situation required, Chen replied with a slight smile. It just happened that the situation required rather more force than anyone expected. The main display chimed with an incoming transmission. Commander Torres, now promoted to captain and serving as the Joint Operations Coordinator, appeared on screen. Admiral, Ambassador, the final sector sweep has been completed. Captain Morrison reports that the last known criminal base has been secured. All major network leadership has been captured or eliminated. Excellent work, Captain, Chen replied. What's the status on the reconstruction efforts? Ahead of schedule in most systems. The Thraxian engineering teams have been particularly effective at rebuilding damaged infrastructure. We should have normal commerce restored throughout the neutral zone within another 2 months. It was remarkable progress. The various species had not only worked together to eliminate a common threat but had also proven capable of coordinating massive reconstruction efforts. Trade routes that had been disrupted for decades were flowing freely again, and economic prosperity was returning to systems that had been struggling under criminal influence. There is one more thing, Torres continued. We've received formal requests from 14 additional governments asking to join the Joint Task Force on a permanent basis. Zekai raised an eyebrow. When the operation had begun, many governments had been reluctant to participate, fearing human domination or loss of sovereignty. Now, success had bred its own momentum, and species that had initially been skeptical were eager to join.
What's the human government's position on expansion? Zekai asked. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Earth's position is that any government willing to contribute meaningfully to galactic security should be welcomed.
But, we're also insisting on certain standards for military cooperation and intelligence sharing. In other words, no free riders.
Exactly. If this is going to work long term, everyone has to contribute.
We can't have some species providing the muscle while others just enjoy the benefits.
A soft chime announced another arrival at the observation deck.
Professor Caxlan entered, his tentacles writhing with the excitement that had become his constant state since the operation began. His research on criminal networks had proven invaluable throughout the campaign. "Admiral, Ambassador," he said, his voice filled with barely contained enthusiasm.
"I finished my analysis of the captured data archives.
You're not going to believe what we've discovered." The professor activated a portable holographic projector, filling the space with a complex three-dimensional map.
This network wasn't just a criminal organization. It was a test case. A test case for what? Chen asked.
For galactic conquest, Caxlan replied grimly. The captured communications include references to similar networks operating in other galaxies. This was apparently a proof-of-concept operation to see if shadow organizations could successfully destabilize and control advanced civilizations.
The implications hit Zekai like a physical blow.
"You're saying this was an invasion?" "A very sophisticated one," the professor confirmed. "Instead of sending fleets, they sent criminals, corruptors, and economic manipulators. They were slowly taking control of our civilization from within, preparing for something larger." Chen studied the data with the same calm intensity she had shown during the height of the military campaign.
"Professor, do we have any intelligence on who was behind this? What species or organization was running the test?"
"That's the truly disturbing part," Caxlan said, manipulating the display to show communication logs.
"The trail goes cold at the edge of our galaxy.
Whoever was orchestrating this operation, they're not from any known species.
We're dealing with something completely outside our experience." The observation deck fell silent as the three of them contemplated this revelation.
What had seemed like a successful conclusion to a criminal problem was actually the discovery of a much larger threat. "Admiral," Zekai said slowly, "I think my people need to know about this."
"All of our people need to know."
"Agreed," Chen replied. "But we also need to be careful about how we present this information. The last thing we want is to create panic when we've finally achieved stability." Captain Torres's voice came through the communication system. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command.
Fleet Admiral Harrison is requesting an immediate conference with all Joint Task Force leadership."
"Patch it through to the main conference room," Chen ordered. "Professor, Ambassador, I think we're about to learn how Earth plans to respond to this new information." 10 minutes later, they found themselves in a secure conference room facing holographic representations of the highest military leadership from Earth and their allied governments.
Fleet Admiral Harrison, a stern woman with silver hair and penetrating gray eyes, spoke first.
"Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings," she began, "our intelligence services have been analyzing Professor Caxlan's discoveries around the clock. What we've learned has prompted some significant policy decisions." She gestured to an aide, who activated a display showing ship construction yards throughout human space. The facilities were operating at maximum capacity, producing vessels at a rate that seemed almost impossible. "Earth has authorized the largest fleet expansion in our history," Harrison continued. "We're also inviting our allies to participate in joint development of new defensive technologies.
If there's a threat out there that can orchestrate this kind of long-term infiltration, we need to be ready for anything." Ambassador Krell of the Corvan Empire spoke up. "Fleet Admiral, the Corvan government has already approved increased military spending.
Our shipyards are also expanding production. But we need to discuss command structure for this expanded cooperation." "Which brings me to the main point of this conference," Harrison replied. "Earth is proposing the establishment of a permanent galactic security council, with rotating command authority and shared intelligence resources. This wouldn't replace individual government militaries, but it would provide a framework for coordinated response to threats like this."
The proposal was ambitious beyond anything previously attempted in galactic politics.
It essentially meant creating a permanent military alliance with unprecedented authority to act across territorial boundaries. The question, Harrison continued, is whether the galaxy is ready for that level of cooperation.
Zekai looked around at the various representatives.
6 months ago, most of these governments had been reluctant to work together even temporarily. Now, faced with evidence of a threat that transcended individual species, they were being asked to essentially merge their military planning on a permanent basis. One by one, the various governments indicated their agreement. The success of the Joint Task Force had proven that cooperation was not only possible but dramatically more effective than individual action. As the conference ended and the various holograms faded away, Zekai found himself alone with Admiral Chen in the observation lounge once again. "Admiral," he said, "when I sent that distress call, I was hoping to save my ship and crew. I never imagined I was helping to reshape galactic civilization."
Chen smiled, looking out at the bustling activity around Harmony Station. "Ambassador, sometimes the most important changes start with someone simply asking for help when they need it. You didn't just send a distress call. You started a conversation about what we owe each other as civilized beings.
And, now we find out whether that conversation can help us face whatever's waiting out there in the dark between galaxies," Chen replied.
"But, based on what I've seen over the past 6 months, I'm optimistic about our chances."
Outside the viewport, ships from dozens of different species worked together with the efficiency that had once seemed impossible. It was a sight that filled Zekai with hope, even in the face of the unknown threats that might be waiting beyond their galaxy. He had asked for help, and humanity had answered with more than he could have imagined. Now, all of them together would face whatever came next, united by the bonds forged in the crucible of shared struggle. It was, he reflected, exactly what the galaxy needed to survive whatever challenges lay ahead. The stars beckoned with both promise and threat, but, for the first time in galactic history, the civilized species would meet them together.